I was in labor for 4 days and I was like, contractions. My husband would put the gas in my mouth. I'll be like, well, if you watch till the end, you will find out exactly why my labor kept stalling. So if you've been following my journey so far, so I posted a video about my finding out I was pregnant, first trimester, second trimester, all of that shebang. Then you know how we got here. Right, I'm going to start from the day before I actually went into labor. So I went overdue, guys. Like, my labor experience started from 36 weeks, I would say, because at that point I had already started to have really intense contractions. Fine, they weren't as intense as the actual contractions near the end of like getting the baby out, but they were stronger than Braxton Hicks, and I knew that for a fact. So I felt like my body was getting ready, my body was preparing. So as of 36 weeks, I started to make sure I had everything ready. I'd called my mom. I was like, Mom, you need to get here. Like, I had got everything all together. By the 37th week, I was ready to go. And guess what? I didn't have this baby until I was almost 42 weeks. Actually, I had her when I was 42 weeks. No, 41 weeks and a day. That was when I had her. So yes, I got everything I needed all together by 37 weeks, and I was ready for this labor and delivery to kick in. I'd been looking forward to this experience like ever since I got pregnant. Even before I got pregnant, I'd been looking forward to what my labor and delivery experience will be like, because if you know me well enough, you would know that I look forward to and I live for like physiological experiences. Like, I just marvel at how the human body works. So I was looking forward to this experience. So by 37 weeks, I started to have these contractions. I let my colleagues know at work, so I was not going in to work as much as possible. I was working from home just in case anything just goes. My colleagues at work threw me a baby shower, and at the baby shower I was having serious contractions. Like, I thought, oh my god, they probably would have to rush me to the hospital from this baby shower, but that didn't happen. So by 38 weeks it was even getting more intense. I had to tell my manager at work that by 39 weeks I would have to, was it 39 weeks or 38 weeks, I stopped working. I took annual leave for a week, and I officially started my maternity leave by the time I got to 40 weeks actually. So I officially started my maternity leave by the time I got to 40 weeks. So I'm using natural lighting, so the lighting is probably going to change here and there, so pardon me. Anyway, so by 40 weeks I was still pregnant, and my mom had been here at that point for about 2 weeks. I was like, okay. So my mom just constantly kept looking at me like, going to labor. Like, if I make the slightest grunt, she would literally just go, has it started? I was just getting fed up, and people were calling me, asking me, where is the baby? Not here. Where's the baby? Guys, if there's one thing you should not do to a pregnant woman who is due to have a baby, is continue asking her, where is the baby? Do you think that she wouldn't want to have that baby? Do you think that she would want to still be pregnant? Do you realize you're making her feel like her body is inefficient? Do you realize you're making her feel like there's something wrong? Meanwhile, there actually might not be anything wrong. So yes, if you know a pregnant woman who is due, refrain from asking her, where is the baby? Wait until she tells you by herself that she's had the baby. That is one of the biggest lessons I learned while I was waiting to have my baby. So as at 40 weeks, my mom was still like, okay, this baby's not coming. What's happening? What's happening? Yeah. We were doing like long walks. I was squatting. I was lunging. I was bouncing on the ball. I was doing everything, name it, every single thing. And 41 weeks started to roll by, and at this point my midwife had checked me on 2 different occasions, so at 38 weeks and at 40 weeks, and she said my cervix was still closed and high up, so it means that nothing's happening. And I'm very familiar with the fact that for first-time moms, things don't kick into gear quickly. They happen gradually in a lot of cases, and sometimes they can take a long time to fully establish. So at this point, if I'd been having all these contractions and nothing was actually happening, what's going on? I was just curious. I didn't know what was happening. I was stressed to an extent. I was just it was a lot. And then people now calling to, I actually had to tell my friend that I will block her if she called me one more time to ask me where's the baby. It was that bad. My dad had arrived in the UK as well a week to my due date, so he was waiting for the baby as well. So there was all these people waiting, and my daughter decided she was going to just chill. Well, if you watch till the end, you will find out exactly why my labor kept stalling. This is something that you would need to note. If you're a soon-to-be mom, or if you're planning to be pregnant in future, you need to note this down. So just watch this video until the end, and I will let you know exactly what I know and I feel very strongly the problem was. So there were two things that contributed to how my labor and delivery went in the end. I had been booked in for an induction on exactly the day I become 41 weeks. And I really did not want to have a medical induction, and also because I really do like physiology and biology, the biology of the human body. I just strongly believe that a lot of things during this labor and delivery experience could have happened naturally, and I really wanted them to happen naturally. So I just wanted to avoid an induction as much as possible. So at this point, I had been considering taking castor oil, the good old castor oil. I thought about it so many times at the point where I passed 40 weeks. I was just like, you know what, I'm fed up, I'm tired, I need to have this baby. I want to have this baby out. I wasn't necessarily fed up actually. I feel like it was just the pressure, the external pressure, because I feel like I could have hung on for a little bit longer if it was just me. So I got into the point where I was like, you know what, everybody's disturbing me. I just want to have this baby. I'm actually ready now. Let's have this baby. So I ordered castor oil, and I told myself that if my labor hadn't kicked in by the Monday, I would take the castor oil on Monday night, because I was due to see my midwife on Tuesday, and then my induction was scheduled for the Thursday. Right guys, so I buy the castor oil, and by Monday evening, lo and behold, I wasn't in labor despite doing everything. I did a mile circuit, I did long walks, I took long walks, I was squatting, I was lunging, everything. Like that day I was even exhausted. I was telling myself, like, if you even go into labor, would you have energy to even withstand the whole process? But yeah, so by Monday evening I got the castor oil and I didn't go into labor. So I thought, you know what, just do it. I had done my research and I had decided that for me personally, castor oil was not going to do me any harm. Fine, I'd have diarrhea, but after all my research, I didn't see that it would do any harm to the baby. The worst case scenario, I'll have diarrhea, I'll be dehydrated, so I will make sure I'm close to a toilet, and then I can drink as much water as possible. So I drank my castor oil on Monday evening. By about 10 p.m. exactly, I took the castor oil. By 4 a.m. Tuesday morning, I had this strong contraction that woke me out of sleep. Whoa. And before this point, I had been to the toilet a few times, so I think the castor oil caused the diarrhea to start from about 12 midnight to 2 a.m. I was going to the toilet, so that was just diarrhea. But by 4 a.m. this contraction kicked in, and I had a really strong contraction, and I woke up and I was like, okay, I think this is it. So I woke up and I didn't want to alarm anybody. I just sat on my ball and I bounced and bounced and bounced and rocked, and I was just going through these contractions. So at this point, they were happening every 8 to 15 minutes. So sometimes they were closer, other times they were longer, and I was like, okay, early stages, I'm happy. At least I'm having contractions that are intense and very painful. And I saw my bloody show as well that morning, and that gave me the ultimate confirmation that something has started happening, and I was so happy. I was so happy. Like, imagine seeing your bloody show and being like, hallelujah. I was too happy. Like, I went back and I was just labored. So by 4 a.m. I didn't wake anyone up. So by about 8-9 o'clock, when everyone in the household started to wake up, and I then let them know that I had been having contractions from about 4 o'clock, and my mom obviously was very happy. My husband, I told him to just call into work and tell them, you're not going into work anymore, you're kick-starting your paternity leave from now, because I'll need you here for this laboring process. So I had prepared him up until this very point, because he was going to be my birthing partner. So yes, labor started, and I was happy, I was jolly, I was happy-go-lucky. I'm going to insert some clips of the first thing.
And they're doing lots of work for you.
She's all right, Mike. I think she's doing really well.
Yeah, she's doing brilliant. We need to support her with this. And if she says she needs anything, then obviously we're open to what she wants to use. It's hard to see her in pain. But you'd be doing a great job.
The tummy so it comes out.
Just gently, or maybe just rub down. But no, it is hard for you to see her in pain. Maybe it's not nice when this stage. Well done, nice slow breaths in and out. You do get quite a few women that will come in and say they don't want an epidural, for instance, but they're happy to have gas and air, Internox, or pethidine, or to have paracetamol, that type of thing. So it's quite unusual with Gazelle because she's not having any pain relief at all. Both of their parents want a natural route for labour and for their baby, and they've got very strong beliefs.
26-year-old Sophie is recovering from her emergency caesarean section. Her husband and family have rushed into hospital from their home in Stratford, 30 miles away.
First day, so I told myself that I'm going to write this out for a minimum of 24 hours because I know that first time labor is usually slow. So minimum of 24 hours unless I feel like actually I need to get to the hospital. So by the time the day was ending on that Tuesday, I had been having contractions consistently, and it picked up in the evening and it became closer together. I think so in the evening it was about every 5 to 6 minutes. At this point I still felt like actually no, we've not gotten to the point where it's like at least a minute long, at least 3 in 10 minutes, and that happened consistently for an hour. So I hadn't gotten there yet, so I knew that it wasn't established yet. But one thing concerned me. I felt like I hadn't really felt her move for a bit. So I decided to call the hospital, and I let them know that I've been having contractions. I know I'm not established yet. I know I'm not in active labor yet, and I'm not even at the point where I feel like I can't cope at home, but I'm concerned about movement. So they asked me to come in. So I went in on that day and they checked me and they said you're 1 centimeter dilated. I was like, yay. I did a non-stress test. So the non-stress test just showed me that baby was happy, baby was fine, she was doing okay, and she had started moving. So we all were fine. We decided we'll go home. I'll labor for another full 24 hours. I mean, by the time another 24 hours comes around, I should be in active labor by then. I should try and cope at least for that 24 hours. So the midwife asked me if I wanted some pain relief, and I said nah, I'll be fine, I can cope. I'll only take pain relief when I feel like I absolutely want to just rip my skin off. So we went back home and I labored for the second day. I went on a really long walk with my husband while I was having contractions. I'm sure people were looking at me like this woman is crazy, but I still did it. And then in the evening, my friends came around and we went for another walk, still having contractions, but I was cracking jokes, you know, still happy-go-lucky, jolly. By the evening, my contractions became a bit more, and I was like, okay, I think I should go to the hospital now. Packed all my bags, decided let's head on to the hospital. And we got to the hospital and I was examined, and the lady said, you're only 2 centimeters dilated, my love. I think you might need to still go back home and continue laboring. I was a little bit devastated, but I was happy. I was like, it's fine, 1 more day, I won't die, it's okay. At least if I'm doing 1 centimeter every day, by the time I come back here I have to be at least 3 centimeters, and then I'll beg to stay. So I went back home and I carried on laboring. So at the point when I went to the hospital on day 3, of which I spent all day literally think about this. I'm having contractions back to back, which means that I'm barely sleeping, which means that I'm barely able to eat, and I don't even think I drank any water in this time period. So I forced myself to eat and drink a bit because my mom was around, and trust a Nigerian mom to not let you just be without food. So she made me eat, and I drank a little bit, and yeah, so by the time I got to the hospital on day 3 and I got examined, at this point my contractions were actually more intense. At that point I really felt like I have to be in active labor. At this point I have to be in active labor. But I went in and I got examined, and midwife says that I'm only 2 centimeters dilated. Rewind to yesterday night, I was only 2 centimeters dilated. Now come back, I'm only 2 centimeters dilated after 24 goddamn hours. Oh my god, I was losing it. But not, I didn't really let myself like lose it, because I was trying to cope with the pain, and I knew that if I let myself come out of my zen mental space, I may not be able to manage the pain. So I still tried to like keep my cool. I lost it for a few minutes, but I gathered myself back and I said, you know what, it's fine, it's going to be fine, things will progress, you will be fine. So midwife offered me pain relief. At this point I said, you know what, I'll take something mild, and then she offered me either crocodile or Oromorph. So I asked for Oromorph, which I took 10 mils off. And then I asked if she could give me a membrane sweep as well, and she did. So I thought, okay, this should make things happen a little bit faster, hopefully. And then she left me for about half hour. I came back to check. During this half hour, she was doing a non-stress test. So she checked on me, checked on baby. Baby was fine. She checked me and she goes, oh, you're 3 centimeters now. I was so happy. I was like, yes, things are moving. So she said that we'll still have to send you home though, because you're not quite active yet. So I asked her if I could just walk around, because my thinking was she had just done a membrane sweep, which means that I should hopefully progress a little bit quicker. So I asked her if I could just walk around the hospital grounds for about an hour or 2 and see if I come back I might already hit 4 centimeters, at which point they could admit me. And then she said, yeah, that's fine. And she said she'll speak to the doctor first and then come back to me and then get me off the monitor, and then I can go. So she went to the doctor and came back and said, the doctor says I should admit you. And I was like, interesting, why? She didn't really say much, but she just said, yeah, they just said I should admit you, that you're almost active. And then I was happy, because I was like, okay, that means I'm here and I'm gonna have this baby before I leave. That is all good, you know, things are going, I'm happy, everyone's happy, let's do this. There was something going on with my baby's growth. So as of 34 weeks, my midwife said that my fundal height was in the right place. At 36 weeks, she decided that my fundal height has gotten lower. So my understanding was that my baby has now engaged and dropped. So it will make sense that my fundal height was lower. But she sent me for a scan just to be sure. So when I went for the scan, I was told that my baby was weighing 3 kilograms already, and that if she went full term, she would be almost 4 kilograms. So she was doing okay in terms of her weight. And I was happy-go-lucky, you know, nothing wrong. And I was told that I would come back for another scan in 3 weeks' time, which was when I was 38 weeks. Actually, I had my first scan at 35 weeks and the second scan at 38 weeks. So by the time I went in for the second growth scan at 38 weeks, I was told that my baby's weight trajectory had declined a little bit. And the doctors examined it and they said it could just be a user error. So it could be the person measuring the person who did the initial measurement might have overestimated, and then the person who did this measurement might have underestimated. So they told me that I would come in for another scan at 40 weeks just to see what the trajectory would look like as at then, because at this point they couldn't really ascertain what was actually happening. But what they would tell me was that my baby was actually at a good weight, so I had nothing to worry about. So my 40-week scan never got booked. I wondered about it, but I never questioned, I never asked anyone. I just thought to myself, well, she's a good weight, there's nothing to worry about, I'm fine, I'm healthy, at the end of the day she'd be fine. But in hindsight, I should have requested my 40-week scan. So this is just for anyone out there watching who might be in a similar position at some point in future. if you need to do follow-up scans, make sure you book all your follow-up scans. Make sure you do everything just to make sure you know what's going on. So they had already classed me high risk due to the fact that they weren't quite sure what was going on with my baby. And in my birth plan, I only wanted to be on a midwife-led unit. However, if you were high risk, you have to be physician-led. So when she told me that they were going to admit me, she said to me that I will be going to the physician-led unit. I hadn't known about it up until that moment. And I said, why? And she goes, because of the weight drop, my baby's weight, they're not quite sure what's going on, so they just want to be on the safe side. And I was not happy because I know that doctors, and I watch lots of like labor and delivery stories. I watch positive ones and I watch negative ones, and what I took away from the negative ones that I wanted to avoid was to avoid too much intervention. And I knew that doctors just wanted to throw interventions at you because they just wanted to they just usually would want to just get everything done and just out of the way. And I just wanted my body to do things naturally. I didn't want too many interventions. I would have intervention if absolutely necessary, but if I could avoid it, I would avoid it. And I knew that being where doctors were meant that I would keep having interventions being thrown at me. And I only wanted midwife-led. But anyways, when they insisted I had to go physician-led, I said to the midwife, I don't want doctors to deal with me. Can you make sure that the doctors stay out of the room and you're the one that I'll be dealing with? And she said she would make sure of that, and that put my mind at ease. So off we go into our room. They, get us all set. They read my birth plan. I knew that I wanted somewhere natural, calming, peaceful, zen vibes. So the midwife brought me a night light. So there was like stars in the room. I'm going to put a short clip. And then I was playing my worship playlist in the background. So I was just listening to worship music that made me feel strong and powerful. This was recommended by my colleague Zoe. Shout out to Zoe if you watch this. So I had a worship playlist with like really, really like empowering music, and my husband was there, my mom was there, and it just felt like nothing could be better in the world right now. Despite all the pain that I was going through, I was just really happy and calm, and just, I was just zen in that moment.
Every contraction takes you close to the.
So then the midwife came and asked if she could break my waters, and I thought about it and I thought, why not? Might as well. If your waters are broken, the baby's head comes a bit further down and can engage in the pelvis and can engage on the cervix better, and hopefully cause further dilation. So I said okay to her breaking my waters, and she did, and it was quite a very it was a very funny feeling when she did, and the water was so warm. It was funny. I thought it was going to be painful. I didn't feel anything. I just knew that my waters came out and it was just constantly leaking. And she said, carry on laboring. So I did. At this point, I'd only had that 10 mils of Oromorph that I had had earlier. So a few hours later, so I would say roughly about 6 hours later, she came and examined me, and I was still just 6 centimeters. And she said that the doctor said they need to give me Pitocin, which is a synthetic form of oxytocin at this point, to get things moving. And I said to her to go and tell the doctor that I don't want Pitocin, that is there anything else they can offer or ask me to do that doesn't involve giving me medication. And she went to the doctor, came back and said, the doctor said fine, they will leave me for a little bit longer. I should see if I can progress this a bit further. So I moved around the room, I bounced on the ball, I was doing everything, I was squatting, every time I'd have a contraction, my husband will have to like rub on my back, just, you know, the counter pressure, and that helped a little bit to relieve the pain of the contractions. So I was doing everything, and she came back a few hours later again and examined me, and I hadn't progressed any further. At this point, I was feeling a lot of pressure in my bum. Like my bum just felt like it was going to explode, like something massive was trying to come down my bum. I didn't know what that was, and I said to the midwife, there's a lot of pressure in my bum, and she said, it's just fine, it's the baby's head trying to move down, it's okay, you'll be fine. So she checked me again a few hours later, and I still hadn't progressed. And at this point I said to her, okay, can we consider the Pitocin? But if you're going to be giving me that, I'm going to need some form of pain relief, because I'm aware that Pitocin contractions are a lot stronger than natural contractions. So she asked what sort of pain relief would I like. So I asked for gas and air. So I was going to make sure I only went up the ladder gradually. I didn't want an epidural straight away, and I knew they couldn't even give me an epidural until I was in active established labor. At this point I was only 3 centimeters dilated for all these hours. So she carried on, she gave me the gas and air, and then they introduced the Pitocin. So she started on a really low dose and gradually went up. So I think they started at 1 and they went up to 2, which was where I was for the most of the time. I don't think they went up any further for a long time. My body went into mad contractions. I was on the gas and air and I was saying all sorts of nonsense. Gas and air is elite. Literally, it was so wavy. I was on cloud 9 with the gas and air. I don't think it relieved my pain per se, but it just made me feel out of, like I was having an out of body experience. Like it didn't feel like it was my body that was experiencing the pain, but then it was my body that was experiencing it. I don't know if you understand that. So yeah, I had gas and air. I kept laboring. It was so painful, it was so intense with the Pitocin. At this point I was having contractions back to back every 2 minutes. It was crazy. Like I didn't get breaks. I was pinching myself. I was just trying to like deal with the pain in any way possible without having to ask for epidural. And in my head I kept thinking, right, with all these contractions something must be happening. I was just happy to ride through the waves of the contractions, so I still kept in my zen mode, and I was taking my gas and air, and my husband was rubbing on my back doing counter pressure. My mom was in the room with moral support. At some point she'll take over doing the counter pressure from my husband, and we kept going like that. And oh my god, I just close my eyes and I can just still envision myself just sucking on that gas and air for dear life. Few hours passed and they come and examine me again, and lo and behold, I'm still 3 centimeters dilated. And I was like, what is going on? I was exhausted at this point. I was literally exhausted. At this point, it had come up to the next day, which was now day 4 of my labor and delivery process. It was crazy. It was crazy. And the doctor then came and said they had to do a C-section. And I was like, what do you mean you have to do a C-section? Have we explored everything possible? Have we explored everything? This is nothing against C-sections, but I know well enough from lots of videos that I've watched, and I would recommend that you watch lots of videos just to gain a lot of experience. If you can stomach it, just understand like how labor and delivery works, and go to your antenatal classes and just learn a lot. So I just knew that a C-section was like the end of the line. I felt like we hadn't explored everything. I don't want to jump all the way to that point because you're in a hurry to go. Let's explore everything first. Okay, fine, I'm on gas and air. I'm still 3 centimeters dilated. I've not had the epidural. Have we considered an epidural? Did you ask me if I wanted an epidural? I said to them, give me the epidural. The epidural might make me relax a bit more and help my body dilate a bit further. So give me the epidural and give me another good number of hours to see if we will progress. And the doctor said, okay, give me the epidural. At this point, the doctor looked at me and said, this woman, you're very stubborn. And I said, yes, because I know what I want, and I'm not just going to let you force things on me. I'm just going to go by what I want. When they told me the C-section, at the back of my mind, I had registered that we might have to get there in the end if things don't progress okay. but I was already trying to, like, you know, wrap my mind around the fact that I would have to undergo major surgery if necessary, and that was fine. It was okay if we had to do it, as long as I'm fine and baby's fine, great. So at this point the doctor came on board with like just working with me to find what works. So they weren't like forcing things on me anymore. I was the one, we were having like conversation to understand exactly what the next step of the process would be and what I'll be comfortable with and what they would suggest. So at that point I was happy. We did the epidural. At this point I had agreed to do the epidural. I felt like my mind tapped out of trying to cope with the pain. That was when I knew what it meant when people say labor pain is mad. And at that point I realized how much of a mind over matter thing it could be, because at the point where my mind was set on coping with the pain, I was actually coping to an extent despite the pain being intense. At the point where I decided to have an epidural though, I thought to myself, well, I don't have to deal with the pain anymore. My mind tapped out and I felt the pain as intensely as everyone describes it, like back-to-back contractions. At this point they had actually stopped the Pitocin, but my body was still doing every 2 minutes contractions, every 2 minutes. They had stopped the Pitocin and I was still contracting every 2 minutes as intensely as, oh my god, I felt like I was going to just tear into pieces, literally. And unfortunately for me, the anesthesiologist who would do the epidural was in surgery, so he could not come. I was dying. Contractions every 2 minutes. Actually, the anesthesiologist did not come for at least another hour and a half. I was in pain. At a point, I held on to my husband. I was like, I'm going to die. This pain is too much. And he looked at me and he started crying. He was like, can somebody help her, please? And then I looked at him and I was like, no, please stop crying. It's normal. Labor pain is crazy. Don't mind me saying all these things. I know that this is normal. I'm actually not dying. So I kept having to just ride through those waves with gas and air. And the anesthesiologist came and I literally could jump and hug him. And I had to sit still. Imagine having all these intense contractions and having to sit still to have the epidural put into your spine, knowing that if you even move a little bit, you could just be paralyzed forever. I had to adjust to talk about this part. So my strategy was, I told my husband, hang on to the gas and air. Stand right in front of me. I'm going to hold this pillow. I'm going to crouch down. The minute I shout that a contraction is coming, you put the gas and air in my mouth, because I cannot move while they're doing this. And I sat as still as possible, and I was like, and I made sure that all the movement was only in my head. I was I literally did not move an inch, and the anesthesiologist had to praise me for how bad my contractions were, because they were looking at it on the screen and I didn't move an inch. I didn't flinch. It was mad, and that's because I knew I didn't want to get paralyzed. And this was why I was trying to avoid an epidural in the first place. I knew that the more intervention you have, the more there's a risk of things going wrong. The more intervention, and even point of me trying to avoid a C-section was also that the more intervention, the more risk of things going wrong. Imagine going undergoing major surgery. Fine, lots of people have C-sections and it's fine, but there's still always that tiny risk that something could go wrong, and I just wanted to avoid it if it was avoidable. So I had the epidural, and after having not slept for almost 4 days now, I literally knocked out, like the speed of light. I knocked out. I could still feel my contractions and I could still move my legs. And I said to the anesthesiologist, is this meant to happen? He goes, yeah, I gave you a low dose because I know that you still want to experience the natural process. And I was like, I love this so much. Like, it took the edge off, but I could still feel my contractions. And I said to myself mentally, my next baby, I'm going to get this kind of epidural, because I didn't realize that I would still be able to like feel things happening. Do you get? Which was my main thing. I just wanted to still be able to feel. So I got the patient control anesthesia, which meant that I could always top up my dose if I needed to. So we had the epidural in for a good 6 to 8 hours, and they came back to re-examine me, and I was only 3 centimeters still. So after all this time, I could only get to 3 centimeters, but I still kept feeling pressure in my bum and I couldn't understand it. But at this point, I was just like, do you know what? within 3 centimeters for almost an entire day, with the Pitocin, with the epidural, with everything, there's still no progression. I'm now going to consider having a C-section. Can I speak to the doctor? And the doctor came and we spoke, and she said, you're happy for a C-section? Are you sure? Because I guess at this point they already knew that I was going to raise hell if they were doing something that I wasn't happy with. And at this point I'd wrapped my head around it. I was like, I'll be fine, my baby will be fine, I'm happy to do a C-section, so let's do it, let's go for it. So I was happy being wheeled into the theatre. I was chatting with the anesthesiologist who topped up my epidural to make sure that I had a block from neck down. Was it from neck down? I don't know. From here down, I couldn't really feel anything after he had topped up my medication. So myself and my husband went into the theatre, and within a few minutes my baby was born. The hospital was so lovely. One of the ladies in the room took my phone and she asked if I wanted her to take pictures, so she took lots of pictures. I would put a few photos on the screen. And she took lots of pictures of the process, of my baby coming out, of myself, my husband, of our reactions, of just everything. And it was just so beautiful. When I first heard her cry, it was just amazing. I can't describe that experience. It was beautiful. People who had like really negative birth, labor and delivery experiences don't get to experience that euphoria that you get when your baby like takes their first breath. And I was so happy in that moment that I allowed myself to go through the motions and actually agree to do a C-section, and it wasn't forced on me. Fine, if it was an emergency situation, I would have understood, but I was able to actually go through the motions, agree to do a C-section, and wrap my head around it and know that I can still be happy despite having a C-section. And I was happy in that moment. I was so happy. And yeah, that was how my baby was born. I was wheeled back out the room and we did skin to skin, and it was just all really good vibes from then on. As soon as she came out, I cried, my husband cried, everyone was just an emotional mess. Someone came to me and said, is that your mom in the other room? And I was like, yeah, that must be her. They were like, she's been singing and singing and singing and dancing ever since you've been wheeled into this room. And I was like, oh my god. Literally, I had such a beautiful experience despite the ups and downs, and despite having a C-section that I didn't originally wish for. Again, there's nothing wrong with having a C-section. I just wished I would have felt my baby, you know, coming out of my hoo-ha, but she came out a different way, which was beautiful still. And yeah, shout out to every mom who's had a C-section. There's nothing wrong with having a C-section. I just weirdly want to experience the physiology of birth. But I had a C-section and I absolutely loved it. I'm going to talk about my postpartum recovery experience and everything about that in another video. But if you watch up until this point, thank you so much for sticking by. Now, let me tell you why I feel like I was having all that pressure on my bum and I wasn't progressing. So fast forward to a few months later, my sister has had her baby, and my sister was having the exact same symptoms as me, so she wasn't really progressing past a certain point, and she was feeling all this pressure in her bum. Turns out she was constipated, and the doctor evacuated the poop, and after that she progressed from 3 centimeters to 10 centimeters within the space of a few minutes. So I think I was constipated because I had taken the castor oil, I had diarrhea, then I got dehydrated, and I didn't really drink enough water to rehydrate myself. So I was constipated, which was the pressure I was feeling in my bum, and nobody thought about that. So at least now I know. I can't fault anybody for that. Yeah, and I'm happy I took the castor oil. Now let me tell you why I'm happy I took that castor oil. My labor kept stalling for a reason. So when my baby got taken out of my belly, when she got, you know, delivered, someone came to ask me if I was a smoker, and I was like, no, why? And she goes, your placenta has calcified. And that meant that as of 36 weeks, between 34 and 36 weeks, my placenta had started to degenerate, which means that my placenta was no longer adequately feeding my baby, which was why she was losing weight. And if I had just let her be in there longer, God forbid, we would not have her now. And I'm happy that I got the inspiration to take that castor oil, because initially I beat myself up for taking castor oil, but now I'm happy that I actually took the castor oil because it kick-started my labor and I was able to get her out in good time. If I let myself go past term or even up to 42 weeks, who knows what could have happened, because my placenta had degenerated. So at the end, all in all, I had such a positive experience. I'm happy. My take home is that I'm fine, my baby's fine, we're both doing okay. She's beautiful and she's alert and she's gorgeous, like she's everything. And yes, this is all I wanted to say. So I hope you've learned one or two things from my labor and delivery experience. I've learned a lot despite me having done a lot of research. Thank you guys for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one.